Pokémon Scarlet and Violet are perhaps the most controversial Pokémon games in quite a while. I myself had a wonderful time playing through this story and deeply enjoyed the music, characters, new Pokémon and mechanics, and the new gameplay experience especially. But I understand others' issues with the visual performance and have to agree. This does seem to pale in comparison to other big-budget AAA games, even on the Switch. Moreover, I know people find bugs annoying, even though I don't, but that's all to say I get it. But people are so passionate and sometimes even ambitious with their opinions that it can be hard to have that back and forth conversation about our enjoyment or lack thereof of these games. And I have to say, I find it very ironic given the story of these games, since they're all about empathy, sympathy, and compassion, not to mention the death of the ego. And it all has to do with the treasure hunt. Spoilers ahead for the entire story of Pokémon Scarlet and Violet. Yeah, I bet you forgot about that, huh? The whole premise of the game is the school-wide treasure hunt to more or less find what makes you happy. Every member of Team Star describes their community as their greatest treasure, as does Arvin about his Mabosstiff, and cooking, I think, honestly, I forget. And Nimona about battling, I also forget this, but surely she does. But what is it about the treasure hunt that has to do with all these different forms of love? That's what I want to describe in this video. Ages ago, I had an argument with a friend about the difference between empathy, sympathy, and compassion. Just looking at the dictionary definitions seemed to cause more confusion, and even visual metaphors only made things worse. So listen up, because every time I've had this argument with someone, I've been proven right, and knowing the difference is important to this video. Think about empathy, sympathy, and compassion as stages of love. The bottom stage is empathy, which looks like understanding what someone feels despite not knowing why. For example, if you see someone randomly on the street crying, you can tell they're sad and, from there, might feel sad as well, or even feel compelled to go and check in on them. You don't know why they're crying, but you know they're sad and therefore feel the same. That's empathy. But if the person were to tell you that they were crying because their mom died and you've never even had a close family member die, but can still understand their sadness, that's also empathy. Sympathy is the second stage, and it looks like understanding what someone feels because you know why and have experienced the exact same thing yourself. So back to the previous example, if that crying person told you their mother died and your mother had also recently died, you feel the same because you have a shared experience, and that's sympathy. Of course, that assumes you both loved your mothers. You may have had the same experience of having a mother die, but because you're two different people in two different environments, you may have had different reactions. This is important to know. You should never assume you sympathize with someone. For all you know, what you perceive as the same experience may have been completely different. It's always good to clarify these things first, for those of you that are looking at a lesson in, society, I guess. The last stage is compassion, which is, simply put, loving action. The first step to compassion is to assess for needs. Normally, that will initially look like asking if you can do anything for a person, but sometimes, in emergencies, it can look like stepping in immediately. It's important to know, though, that it doesn't count as compassion when you just do what you think someone needs. It might be helpful, or it might hurt them. The best thing you can do is ask first, and if the person says no in a strong tone, accept that. I say strong tone because sometimes people say no but really mean, I don't want to make you do anything for me because I don't want to inconvenience you, at which point it is okay to ask if that's the case. Main point, communication is the key to compassion. Okay, that's a lot of moral, philosophical talk for a Pokemon video. Why do I bring this up at all? Because it is critical to understanding the artistic purposes of the story of Scarlet and Violet, which might just end up being the key to understanding the storyline of any DLC that might arrive. Walk through this with me. We're going to go level by level here, starting with empathy, which is the main focus of the Starfall Street storyline in Scarlet and Violet. Allow me to paint you the picture. A new principal arrives at the school named Clavel. He finds that the school is in wonderful order except for one thing, a group of rapscallions called Team Star. At first glance, they seem to be a bunch of bullies disrupting school, so he puts out an announcement. If Team Star doesn't disband within a certain period of time, all members will be expelled. Clavel expects this will shake them enough to disband, but, as we know, they don't even do so much as to respond to him. Now truly stunned, Clavel decides he has to find out what Team Star really is, and that's exactly what he does. As you, the player, progress through each base of Team Star, a spy named Clive, who is definitely not Clavel, tags along. The pair learn the history of the team as they go. As it turns out, Team Star isn't the bully. In fact, Team Star was created to stop bullying, and they did that to great immediate success. But now that Clive knows all this, and has also deduced that the founder is Penny, the question becomes, how will he respond? This is where empathy comes in. Clavel never describes himself as having been bullied, or even ever being a bully, but he still understands that the bullying was enough reason to band together and make a change in a non-violent way. He also grows to understand that, as each member of Team Star, including Penny, describes, this community is their greatest treasure. So instead of punishing them for disrupting school, he turns them into a school-sanctioned way to build community and learning. That's empathy turned into compassion. It's a beautiful thing. Many people would describe Clavel as one of their favorite characters, especially because of Clive, to whom Clavel has absolutely no connection whatsoever. But to me, it's more than that. Clavel represents something even deeper than just a principle. Clavel represents intergenerational empathy. Clavel shows kids what good adulting looks like, and it should do the same for the adults still playing Pokémon too. Clavel teaches us that when we may not understand exactly why it is that kids do what they do, we should ask until we do understand, and then act towards them in such a way that they can grow healthily as a result. Clavel doesn't just shut them down. Instead, he takes what they love and makes the best of it. That's intergenerational empathy, and it's amazing. A final note on this part, obviously I know Clive is Clavel, but the fact that Clavel's willing to literally put himself in the shoes of the students is something so necessary to empathy that I wanted to keep up the illusion. Although doing so makes it a tad harder to highlight the point in some ways, which is why there's this extra note. The second stage is sympathy, as brought to you by Nimona. This part is a bit more situational because you can choose different responses to different pieces of her dialogue, so this one should be thought of as more of a two-way street. But let's review. Nimona is first introduced to us as a passionate battler, and that remains true from beginning to end. But we figure out pretty quickly that no one is quite able to meet her level of excitement in that area. From there, the rest of the story becomes relatively simple. You meet up regularly again and again, battling and chatting about how much you love battling. From beginning to end, not much really changes about Nimona. She's still happy to battle with you just for the challenge, and every time you talk, it's clear that she wants to be friends with you because of this single common interest. But the final battle is what really brings it together. After defeating top champion Gita, you meet Nimona in front of the school to battle one last time. When the cutscene starts, she quickly highlights how big of a deal this battle is, after giving you the same look she gave you in the beginning of the game. People gather around, but as Nimona states, no one cares more about the battle than she does. She's watched you grow in the interest you've both been so invested in over the course of the game, and she finally feels comfortable showing you who she really is, what she's really capable of. This isn't just a test of skill for Nimona, it's a test of friendship. She wants to be sure that you both really feel the same way about Pokemon battles. At the end of the battle, the look she has at first seems a bit hurt. She hasn't felt this sense of real loss at any point in the game. She obviously lost to you before throughout the game, but as she says, this was her full strength, and she lost. So the joy she has isn't fake. Rather, it's the excitement of a new challenge to overcome, a new goal to achieve by doing what she loves. This is most clearly represented in her final lines of dialogue in the scene, where she challenges you to a second round. But it's important to note that these obstacles is something she has watched you have from the beginning of the game. Time and time again, she has been the test for you to pass to move on, and now you're her test. This is the paradoxical nature of sympathy. You now have multiple shared experiences, shared emotions, despite them being the result of different perspectives. And then there's Arven, who is our representation of our final stage, compassion. This is probably the clearest cut, but in many ways also the deepest of the three initial stories. Arven displays compassion from the moment he introduces you to Mimbostiff, in that he's constantly acting out of love for him. The entire Titan hunt is so that he can save his dog, for crying out loud. But since compassion is easily demonstrated, the death doesn't come from the action, but from the reason for that action. Arven has daddy issues, or mommy issues if he played Scarlet. He has received essentially little to no love from his parent, and it makes it hard for him to be comfortable around others. But for the people close to him, he does a miraculous thing. Instead of reflecting the apathy he received from his parent, he reflects compassion. He displays an important aspect of moral compassion: selflessness. Compassion doesn't come from a place of having something to gain or out of a place of spite. Rather, compassion comes from a place of love, from a place of appreciation of the value of human life. The way that Arven represents compassion may be simple, but its importance should not be underestimated. It is profound. And while it should be noted that his flaw is his inability to share that treatment with others he doesn't care as much about, we could all learn a thing or two from the way Arven treats the people he does care about. Okay, so we've talked about all 3 stages of love. Now there's only one thing left that needs to be explained before I get into theorizing, and it's demonstrated by one final character: Turo. Or Sada if you played Scarlet, but I played Violet, so there. As you will undoubtedly remember, Sada and Turo are the parents of Arven that left for Area Zero and pursued their dream of creating a perfect paradise where people and Pokemon would live in perfect harmony. They died in the process, protecting their dream and leaving behind a robotic version of themselves that is seen communicating with the player throughout the game. Then, upon finally meeting them, we learn that it was the professors that brought the Paradox Pokemon into existence via a time machine, and it is with the same time machine that the professor's robot travels to a different place in time. This permanently shuts down the time machine. There's a lot going on here. It might be hard to tell how this has anything to do with empathy, sympathy, or compassion, but the idea is that this part of the story is actually a result of all 3 of these things. The reason for that is the fact that Sada and Turo are Arven's parents. Parental love has all 3 of these stages. A loving parent empathizes, sympathizes, and has compassion for their child. But that's not at all true for working as a scientist like Sada and Turo do. Creating the time machine is purely a result of the ambitions of them as individuals. Sure, they may justify it as being for the good of the greater public, but it is their dream, their idea, their accomplishment. And that creates a certain level of dissonance within their characters, ultimately only resolved by the combination of love presented by the player, Nemona, Penny, and Arven in the final battle. When you first battle the robot, they beg you to defeat them before monologuing about their inevitable success. When you defeat them, the robot assumes it's over, only for it to be revealed that the real Sada or Turo were much more deeply attached to their dreams than they could have realized. When your friends finally enter, the robot has become the Paradise Protocol, and they release to you their final line of defense, Koraidon or Miraidon, depending on which game you play. You then battle alongside your own Miraidon or Koraidon, which is super important because it's simultaneously the result of 2 things: Sada or Turo's accomplishments, and the love given to it by you and your friends. In other words, the only way to stop the momentum created by ambition is to bring dreams of your own, but coupled with love. What the final battle goes to show us is that if we want to stop ambition that is threatening the safety of others or the environment, we have to meet that ambition with a combination of our own hopes and love. Moreover, just like the robot does, we have to be able to recognize when our ambitions have taken us too far. We have to be kind. That's the point of the game. This last part. First time I was writing the script, I wrote the script and I got to this part and I had a whole thing laid out. And I was all excited about it. My wallet, sorry. I thought I had it all together. But I sent this script to a peer reviewer, wonderful online friend, and he looked over it and he said, this first part's beautiful, you make it sound so intentional, it's really great stuff that you're writing here, but this theory, it's wrong in all sorts of places. But I did the research and I left with more questions than answers. So what you're now going to be receiving is bits and pieces of the first theory that I had, but really something so much more than I even thought I was going to be able to offer. here we go. We're going to start with a couple things. The first thing that we're going to start with is the ancient Chaldean king, right? He lived, I think it's 2,000 years ago, so I want to say it's about 1,000 years after the Kalos War. I originally thought that the Kalos War would have something to do with the crater, would have something to do with the king, but those things are completely disconnected from the timeline. Likewise, the crater is like 1,000,000 years old. Way, 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 way older than the king was. When the king was there, this is the evil tyrant king that we're talking about, by the way. He was 997, 98,000 years too late for the crater to be happening. So there's no connection there, theoretically. However, things switch around a little bit when you take a look at a third legendary. There's a lot of details here. It has a crown, and over the center, which is why I think a lot of people thought it was a sphere at first, because you would think it would be like a big head. There's an ocean on the side with a boat. There's a claw at the top center, and what looks like the head of a dragon on the top left. Not to mention that it looks like there's a second shield behind it, in that it's sort of transparent. Moreover, I think that this is meant to be kind of like an eclipse that we're witnessing, where this Pokemon is in front of the sun, which probably provides us with even more details, but definitely tells us something about the size, right? Now, there's another thing that we want to consider when we're thinking about what this thing might look like, which is this sort of Ho-Oh sort of thing. You know how in the first episode of the Pokemon anime, Ho-Oh was there, but Ho-Oh hadn't been in the game yet? What if this legendary has already been shown, but it's not even in the game yet? Because it looks like it's right there in that painting with Ash. That could very well be it. Now, a lot of people talked about this already, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit before I get to the stuff that's unique to mine. But we do have some things that we think are leading to the influence that's creating this Pokemon. Like, literally, the people that are designing the Pokemon, we think we kind of know where they're coming from. First reference would probably be Discworld. That's where we think a lot of this stuff is coming from. And that holds up in a couple places. The first place that holds up is the obvious, like, the disc and world aspect. There are a couple other things that change with that, though. You know, first of all, in this world, there's a giant turtle. So maybe there's some sort of giant creature that's behind the disc. Now, we would have reason to believe that, given that it kind of looks like there's a dragon head. But, in my opinion, there is some uncertainty there because of the fact that the shield looks to be transparent. Or at least somewhat transparent. So it may be that it's there, just obscured somewhat. But moreover, if it is some sort of dragon, it might very well be like a Chinese traditional looking dragon, not completely unlike Orion, the last dragon. Gosh, I'm gonna have to fact check that. I'm gonna have to fact check that. Anyway, and if that is the case, all of a sudden we've got a connection because all the 4 sub-legendaries have these very Chinese-sounding names, which is very odd, considering that we're in Spain. Let me get there. But it would create some explanations. Because first things first, we have those 4 circles that are in Area 0, but also on the logo of the game. And it may very well be the case, that the 4 legendaries have something to do with the 3rd legendary. And the reason that I'm rather confident in saying that is another thing, which is that the Discworld has these 4 elephants, 4 in particular, holding up the world. So it may very well be that these are the sort of 4 elephants of the 3rd legendary. Now that's kind of a jump, and I'll make a stronger connection there later. But before I do, I want to talk about why I think how we can actually draw this connection from China all the way to Spain. What some people will know is just kind of a world history fact. Is, way back, I would say in the 1400s, maybe the 1300s. China's a big deal. China's a real big deal. China's the number 1 place to be in the world. Stronger than Europe by miles. Stronger than India. Stronger than probably, I think, the next strongest group of people you're going to have is like the Muslim Empire that's going all the way from like Northwest Africa to China, which is important because in Spain today you have a lot of people, and I believe the word that gets used is they're Desi people, people that are Muslim that live in Spain. This is a direct result of the Muslim Empire, which is actually the Ottomans, the Safavids, and the Mughal Empire, like spreading all across from China to Spain, along the coast of North Africa in particular. That's the Ottoman Empire that's there. Now, this is important because one of the things that got noted to me when I was on Twitter, like when Gita was first revealed, and someone commented about, I really appreciate this Desi representation. So there's your connection, right? Like, Muslims in Europe go all the way to China. There's your connection. So what am I trying to say here? I'm saying that I think that Gita is going to be a major player when it comes to understanding the 3rd legendary. And that's why I think Glamour is going to have a lot to do with that too. Something that's associating the 2 of them from one end of the world to the other. They're the strongest connection that we have in terms of like a geographical scale. But let me arrive back at one of these things. What even is 3rd legendary, right? What does the 3rd legendary do? Now, we've already established, we think there's a connection to some sort of Chinese dragon. We think that these 4 sub-legendaries have something to do with it. I brought up at the beginning the king and the crater. And these are kind of just jumps. But, it could be fair to say that the crater was caused by this giant 3rd legendary crashing to the earth, assuming it does have some sort of spherical form or just some round shield in front of it, right? Which could actually imply something more powerful than that, but that's just, I haven't even thought about that. I just came up with that on top of my head. So we're going to move on from that because I don't even want to think about that. Maybe it's like Deoxys or something, or Rayquaza, who knows. But anyway, or maybe Arceus. Anyway, third legendary crash. Maybe it creates the crater. But one of the big recurring themes that comes up in the game, in the story, that comes up in the game, in the lore, is ambition, right? That's what we talked about just now. Ambition is a huge thing, and so is, so is love, right? Those are our two big focuses, ambition and love. Now, ambition and dreams have a lot of similarities. They're not interchangeable completely, but they have a lot of places where you could use them and mean the same thing. My theory right now is that all of these things that are coming from dreams and from ambitions are coming from the third legendary. A lot of people have pointed out that there's a very odd paradox happening with the paradox Pokemon. Wow, what a surprise. It's almost like they're called paradox Pokemon. Anyway, the paradox is that 200 years ago, Heath saw the paradox Pokemon, but the paradox Pokemon weren't brought into existence until Sada and Turo's time machine. So how do we explain that? This third legendary explanation would basically say that Heath had ambitions and dreams to show something new to the world, and they were granted to him by this third legendary in the form of the paradox Pokemon. And then again, however many years later, this is 200 years later, the third legendary grants Sada and Turo the ability to time travel, or the ability to create a time travel machine, which brings back Heath's Pokemon. Because it's all about ambition and dreams. Now, if this is true, right, if this is the third legendary's thing, it would also explain the four sub-legendaries, all results of the king's ambition. The king's ambition leaked off in these negative ways. People had ambitions against him, turning these artifacts into Pokemon that are just about destruction, right? Now, all of these Pokemon have some sort of item associated with them, right? Chi-Yu has the beads. I think it's Chi-Yu, right? Fish has the beads. Slug has the tablets that are from the shell. I guess it's the snail. The snail has okay. The snail has the tablets that make the shell. The fish has the beads. The deer has the bowl that kind of looks like a phantom, and if you turn it upside down, it actually kind of looks like a Golbat. Anyway, and then the snow leopard has the swords. But yeah, the point is that all these are coming from the ambitions of this king. And if true, the paradox Pokemon could also be results of this ambition. So all this stuff is bringing us about ambition. Not completely unlike Gia, who is incapable of holding back, as she claims, something that seems to be a result of her ambition, right? So let's think about the end of the game, right? We already talked about how basically the point that the ending of the game is making is that the only way to stop ambition that's detrimental to the world is to couple our own ambition, our own dreams with love, with friendship, right? Of course, the game is basically just saying, that's how you do that. But what if the next question is, what else can you do with love coupled with dreams? If this third legendary Pokemon really has the power to just create new Pokemon, it would be a perfect extension of the themes of the game already, right? It would be a perfect extension to just say, your love and your dreams coupled together can control the power to do literally anything. It's perfect. It's perfect. So what do I think is going to happen in the new DLC? I definitely think we're going to interact with the third legendary, right? And I think we're going to get those new Paradox Pokemon, the Suicune and the Virizion ones. But I think there's something more. I think there's something that's been lying in front of our faces this entire time. And look, I'll be honest, this is truly crazy. And it's entirely possible that this is just fever dreamish, no possibility. But the pieces are right there. We talk about Paradox Pokemon. We talk about all this stuff, but we forget there's something laying in front of us this entire time. Think about these three Pokemon in particular. The Suicune Paradox Pokemon, the Virizion Paradox Pokemon, and Iron Valiant. What do they all have in common? They're all fusions. Do you get it? Do you get it? Fusions. 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 What if, bro? What if? Right? It's a perfect extension of the themes. It's continuing this idea of with love and dreams together, we can do anything. Anything. Including creating new Pokemon. With ones that already exist. Sure, fair, I'll give it up, right? But bro, it's right there. If there's ever been a time, ever in my life, that I've actually thought with legitimate reason that we could be getting Pokemon fusions, even if it's in a super limited quantity. Maybe you can only fuse like out of 50 Pokemon. But who cares, right? Wouldn't that be so cool? I think it's time. I think it's time. I think we're gonna actually get Pokemon fusions in a real Pokemon game. For the record, this is a theory that I helped craft with this online friend who I'm just like, I'll ask him later if I can say what his name is if he wants me to. I just don't want to like publicize him too much. But I just wanted to be clear. I'm only saying that because I just wanted to be clear that I was thinking about this before I became addicted to the new Pokemon Fusion emulator thing. Like this script I wrote way before I even knew that existed. I wrote and I recorded a version of this video where I talked about it before that even happened. But I mean, I might cut a couple clips in it. I'm re-recording it partially because it was still like the unfinished version of the theory. This is actually like the third draft of the theory. It's really funny, but also because it like cuts the top of my head off. so I couldn't use the footage. But there you go, right? Like, that's all the pieces. All the pieces put together, looks like we're going straight to fusion. Fusion, maybe. Like, we're already giving Pokemon new types. Might as well give them new forms to go along with the types, right? Gosh, it would be so cool. It would be so cool. I really hope that I'm right, you know? I really hope that I'm right. I hope you've enjoyed this theory. I really wanted to kill two birds with one stone and cover my thoughts on the artistry of the game combined with where I think the game is going. But honestly, I think that it also just makes sense to approach it this way. Obviously, we have no reason to think they're just going to show us 3 entirely new Pokemon and then just not do anything with them, so of course any DLC would be about those new Pokemon. But more than anything, I think that when we theorize about upcoming games, we too quickly forget to analyze the themes of the existing games, and that's why I wanted to make this video in particular. What can the game tell us about the future games besides just the lore? Anyway, sorry for such a long wait between long-form videos, but they take a long time to write and edit, and I've been super busy with schoolwork and then visiting family over winter break, so there hasn't really been a lot of time for me to work on this sort of stuff, but I'm just glad I get to show it off at all. Comment below what you think might improve, prove, or disprove this theory, and subscribe if you want more stuff like this. I'm currently writing 2 other long-form videos, and then 2 other videos that you could consider long-form, but are more just for fun than anything else. If I end up making both of them, then it should make more sense what I mean later. Anywhoosies, that's the video. Hope you were intellectually stimulated and had a good time. That's all for now, and have a great day.